This is my solution to exercise 3-3 in C++ crash course. Can be found in part 1 chapter 3. Let's read the instructions first. So add an element pointer called previous to listing 3-9 to make a doubly linked list. Add an insert before method to element. Traverse the list from front to back, then from back to front using 2 separate for loops, and then print the operating number inside each loop. So first let's take a look at listing 3-9. You're not going to find this in the zip file that contains all the listings for the book. So I've just typed it out for you. Here is the pointer to the next element. Here is the insert after function, and we're going to create an insert before function, which is the same thing, but it just links the elements differently. And we're going to have to modify this one to include the previous pointer that we're going to add, and then this is just a char prefix 2 and short operating number. It's just data members for the elements. So let's go back to 3-3. You also will need to implement, or you're going to have to use listing 3-10, because if you look in the book, listing 3-9 and 3-10 go together. It's a linked list of these elements, but it only goes one way. So if you read listing 3-10, you should be able to figure out how to make the doubly linked list. You just have to add a few parts to it, so we're going to show you that. Okay, so listing 3-10 is essentially this. You create the 3 elements, you give the prefix and the operating number some data, unique data for each of the elements, makes use of the insert before and then insert after method, and then traverses the list from front to back. So that is from listing 3-10, and then we're going to have to basically just add another reverse list. So let's go back to the instructions here. So add an element pointer called previous, and that's very simple, just like that. But now we have to make use of this pointer. So let's go to our insert after function. Let's look at how it works. So it takes the pointer to an element that we call new element. Let's go back down here. You see how it works. Trooper2, insert after, and then we pass the address to trooper3. So set the next pointer of the new element to the next pointer of this element. Okay, so let's say we have a list of 2 objects, 1 and 3, and we're inserting number 2 into here. Well, if element 1 has a pointer called next to element 3, if we're going to insert 2 in between 1 and 3, we're going to have to get this element to point to the next element. So new element next. Okay, so let's put it another way, because this is insert after. So we're inserting, let's go down here. All right, so trooper2 insert after, and then we give the address trooper 3. So we're inserting 3 after number 2. So we want this new element, number 3, to basically have the pointer. It's a little bit complicated to explain. So this trooper 2 has a pointer called next. And we want, let's take a look at it again. It's much harder to explain than it is to understand. So set the next pointer of the new element to the next pointer of this element, right? You're basically squeezing it in here between two elements. Set the next pointer of this current element to the new element. So now this element, the one that's running the insert after function, should point to the new element, right? So the new element next is equal to this next, and then this next is equal to the new element. Then we set the previous pointer of the new element to this element. So now the new element will have a pointer called previous that points to this element. It sounds more confusing than that, but if you just take some time to look at the program and read it for yourself, you'll be able to understand it. I had a difficult time writing these comments, trying to make it make sense to people. Okay, and then insert before function is the same thing but in reverse. So set the next pointer of the new element to this element. Set the previous pointer of the new element to the previous pointer of this element. And set the previous pointer of this element to the new element. You might want to draw yourself a diagram to understand that better. And each element contains a prefix array. Each element has an operating number and it's a short. Okay, let's go back to our instructions. So that's the insert before method, and then we just want two for loops, one that goes from front to back and the other that goes from back to front, and it prints the operating number inside each loop. So listing 310 gives us the front to back for loop. So as you can see, we go for element pointer cursor equals trooper 1, and then cursor equals cursor next. So all we're going to do is make use of the previous pointer, and it goes in reverse. Okay, and then here is where we print the operating number. So we're going to compile, and then we're going to run valgrind results and output it to a file, a text file. And let's have a look at that text file. There you go. So from front to back, there's trooper 1, 2, and 3. And from back to front, there's 3, 2, and 1. And if you want to go and make sure, trooper 1 is TK, 2 is FN, 3 is LS. And what do we have? TK, FN, LS, LS, FN, TK. Done. Alright. There is the solution to exercise 3-3.